Welcome to the Mike Abadir Show. You'll want to sit tight this hour as host Mike Abadir and co-host Gino Bacola talk to the experts, celebrities, and figures from the worlds of sports and business of sports. We cover the NFL, baseball, basketball, soccer, and horse racing, so we have all of the bases covered. Now, we just need your participation. Here is your host, Mike Abadir.
Welcome to the Mike Abadir Show. This is your host, Mike Abadir, and I am joined by my amazing co-host, Gino Bacola. Good morning, Gino. How are you, my friend?
I'll take amazing. Good morning. And it's morning for me. I probably would have been sleeping another 4 or 5 hours if we didn't have the show to do today. I'm more of a night guy than an early afternoon gentleman. But I'm excited for the guest this week. I'm going to talk to Josh Booty. Being a Trojan fan like I am, I was watching John David Booty and was rooting for John David in some huge years at USC. And, man, when I was just looking up some stuff about Josh to talk to him, he has lived a pretty cool life, huh?
Hasn't he?
just done a little bit of everything. We'll have him on in a minute and talk to him, but he came up. His family, they're just a huge football family involved in coaching. All of his family members, they're involved in sports in some way, shape, or form. He was a phenom high school quarterback. I think I saw he threw for 11,000 plus yards in high school when nobody else had ever thrown for over 10. He defeated he was awarded a lot of accolades going up against Peyton Manning. Going into his senior year of high school. He got drafted into MLB, and as you were mentioning, it was the highest signing bonus ever at that point when he got drafted?
It was, and to me, there's a couple things that stand out about Josh. Well, many things really, but one of the things that I always found many intriguing is a line or a quote by Bill Walsh where he said that Josh Booty was the best, not one of, but he said the best high school quarterback to ever play, which is an amazing accolade coming from the genius himself. But aside from that, I mean, it's amazing when you think of people like Bo Jackson and Deion Sanders and Brian Jordan, who have been two sports stars. Josh played at the highest level, won a World Series with the Marlins, did get the highest signing bonus at the time by the Florida Marlins, like you mentioned, and that we talked about earlier, and then went on to play at LSU. So, we kind of hear about that now with the Russell Wilson type thing, but Russell, even though he's been to training camps and played in the minors, Josh actually got to the big time show. So we'll talk to him about that. And he's really the perfect guest at this time of year because baseball playoff, run is really heating up at this moment in time. We'll talk about that a little bit with the schizophrenic Dodgers and the Indians win streak and who he likes for the World Series. But college football is heating up. The NFL, I don't know if heating up would be the right word. So we'll get Josh's opinion.
Warming up at a slow pace. Yeah, I mean, it's better to have football than no football, but this week in particular, it's an interesting week. There are 10 road favorites this week, and if you look up and down the slate, I only found one game where you can probably say both the teams playing have played good games in the 2 weeks so far we've had, and that's the Falcons-Lions. Other than that, we're going to be looking at a lot of teams who've played bad in one of the 2 weeks so far, and we just haven't seen very many consistent teams all the way through. The play level has not been very good, but, I mean, we're going to bring Josh in. We're going to talk about all this in just a minute.
Yeah, well, let's do that right now. Our next guest, as we've already set up a little bit, is one of the best athletes really in the last 25 or so years. Major League Baseball World Series winner with the Florida Marlins, NFL draft pick after he played a stellar career at LSU. He's played with Cleveland Browns, with the Seattle Seahawks, the Oakland Raiders. Josh Booty is our guest. Josh, how are you, my friend?
I'm getting to the age where I've been out of sports for the last 5 or 6 years, and man, I still feel like I can play. I wish I was in mid-season form like these guys in the NFL right now. But I appreciate you guys having me on the show, man. It's always a pleasure to talk to you and to hang out with you. So this is going to be fun.
Hey, the pleasure is all mine. It's an honor to have you. And, you'd mentioned kind of a little bit of a layoff and having not played for a while, but you actually did do something interesting a couple years ago. For those who don't know, you were involved in a reality show through the Major League Baseball MLB network, and you actually won the competition. Why don't you tell us about that before we kind of dip into your history for a little bit?
Yeah, it was kind of a cool deal. I don't know if the listeners, if many of them know a little bit about golf and the big break, but it was like the big break for Major League Baseball Network. They wanted to do a reality show where there was a competition reality show, and it was coming off the summer of R.A. Dickey winning the Cy Young as the first ever knuckleballer. So it was something that had never happened before. No knuckleballer had ever won the Cy Young, and it happened that year. R.A. Dickey just had a wonderful year, 20-plus wins.
Yep.
And pitched unbelievable. And it was the knuckleball that really won him the Cy Young. So Major League Baseball Network had an idea of, hey, let's bring in, because it's a short arm motion when you throw a knuckleball. And there's Ben Wakefield and Charlie Huff and Tom Candiotti and the Necro brothers. There's only been a handful of guys, Stephen Wright now in the big leagues in RA, but that have thrown the knuckleball successfully. Usually, it's fastball, curveball, slider, change. And it's a completely different pitch. It's so unorthodox, but it's a short arm motion. And so they had this idea to bring in quarterbacks because, if you watch a quarterback's mechanics, it's all short arm motion throws. So, they don't get to wind up. Now, there's been several NFL quarterbacks wind up. One comes to mind, Byron Leftwich. You remember he had that big wind up. It's kind of like a baseball pitcher because you can take your time on the mound, right? But with a knuckleball, it doesn't work like that. You've got to really be like a catcher. You've got to kind of come up close to the ear, and it's got to come out weird. You cannot throw with tons and tons of velocity, the knuckleball. So you've got to take the spin off the ball. So it's a short arm throw, and they thought quarterbacks would do well in a reality show. So they brought in a bunch of former quarterbacks. There's 5 or 6 of us that competed in like a big break type of reality competition show, and I ended up winning the show. I think Doug Flutie went the furthest, along with a guy named David Green, who played quarterback at Georgia and played in the NFL some, and myself, and I was able to knock those guys out. But I was the only guy with real baseball experience, so I did have the upper hand. The Diamondbacks signed me after the show. I was actually throwing it pretty good. I kept the spin off. I could get people out, and went to spring training several years ago with the Diamondbacks, the big league camp. So it was quite a experience for me. I'd never been that nervous before in my life. I only had been throwing the knuckleball for about a month to get ready for the show, and then I guess 2 months. I won the show, and then a month later, I'm standing there on the mound against Bruce Bochy and the San Francisco Giants pitching in a big league spring training game, and I've never been so nervous in my whole life.
Isn't that something? And did you pitch in high school as well? Because everybody knows that you were a defensive whiz in the infield and a pretty darn good hitter. But did you ever pitch in high school?
Yeah, I did, but never the knuckleball. I mean, no one ever really thinks to pick up a knuckleball. Most of the knuckleball guys end up, pitchers that come off injuries and are fooling with it out in the outfield, and the next thing they're fiddling with it, and it looks good, and they start playing with it a little bit more, and over time it just turns into usually a pitching injury turned into a potential knuckleballer. With me, I was just a flamethrower, man. I tried to throw as hard as I could. I really didn't even throw curveballs. My dad didn't want me doing that as a youngster because I felt like my future was going to be playing, in the infield and not pitching. So that's what I did. I played shortstop and like most of the better players in the high school level, play shortstop, center field, as positions. That's what I did. I played shortstop and then of course quarterback at the high school. So that's what I grew up doing, man.
Well, we started with the end of your professional career with the Diamondbacks. Let's go back to the beginning. And Gino and I were talking about this before we got on the air. How was it that you decided between baseball and football? I know you had major college football programs from around the country making offers, and you also had the signing bonus kind of dangling for you as well. You obviously loved both sports, excelled at both sports. Yeah. But what went into that final decision to go with baseball? And obviously, we're going to transition into how you decided to go back to football.
Sure. It was, I guess I was 18 years old. It's, at that point in your life, you're like, every little thing matters. It's the biggest deal in the world. You don't think about anything else that's going on around you. I just, I'd committed to play football and baseball at LSU, and I was really, growing up, baseball was always my favorite. My dad played college football. He didn't play baseball, but the neighborhood kids and the people that I associated with growing up, they were all baseball guys. So football wasn't a big part of my life until high school, and my dad opened up a private Christian school called Evangel Christian in Shreveport, Louisiana, who's, won a lot of titles now and even won a USA Today national championship. But before that, man, I was a baseball player. They got me to go out and play high school football because they said they were going to throw the ball every down, put me in a deep shotgun. We really didn't have great linemen and let me just play pitch and catch. So with the receivers, so football became more fun later in life. Early on, it was always baseball was always king for me. I grew up watching Don Mattingly and Will Clark and Kirk Gibson, and a lot of these guys those are my heroes. It really wasn't the football guys, but football took on a whole new life to me in high school. We had an unbelievable program, and to get to what you said about how did I make the decision to go to baseball first out of high school instead of go play quarterback at LSU, it was because the Marlins were a new franchise. They drafted me in the first round. I felt like I got drafted high enough to get a bonus that was worth me not going to play college football. And I had some major league call-ups in my agreement or in my deal with the Marlins, and they were a new franchise, so there wasn't a whole lot of stacked prospects ahead of me. So I figured I could get to the big leagues really fast by signing with the Marlins, and of course, and go and try to go after my dream of playing in the big leagues. That was what I always wanted to do since I was little. So there was just really no way that I could not sign with the Marlins because of the opportunity that they really presented me, and them being a new franchise. And the NFL, you're always 3 years away from the NFL once you leave high school because you've got to go to college for 3 years. I knew I could get to the big leagues really quick, I thought, with the Marlins. And I was teammates, and I hate to be long-winded, but I was teammates with Alex Rodriguez in the U.S. Olympic Festival, and he played short and I played third, and he batted third, I batted fourth, and he was drafted the year before. So I was on the Olympic team after my junior year of high school, and I saw what happened with Alex and how fast he moved up the ladder and how well he did in the minor leagues. And I felt like I had kind of similar talents. He was a little faster guy than me. He ended up being a 40-40 guy in the big leagues, but I figured I could get to the big leagues really fast. And so, that was part of the reason too, is like, I think I'm a big league baseball player, and I knew that you could play longer, and then you could have a longer successful career as a baseball player from an injury standpoint. So that first decision, that all kind of played into why I chose the baseball.
Well, that's a pretty in-depth perspective, one that you're not going to get anywhere else. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. We've got about 30 seconds before we go to our first commercial break. And I wanted to ask you, what was Jim Leland like playing for him? Was he smoking cigarettes in the dugout?
He was, and he'd take 2 puffs and he'd throw it in the bathroom right there next to the dugout, and he would stomp it out. But he was actually one of the first guys that truly believed in me. So I love Jim Leland. He was a sports nut. So people think Jim Leland baseball. He is a baseball guy. He is Mr. Baseball, but he loved football, man. He loved athletes, and I think that's why he was a great coach, because he just enjoyed the people that he coached all the time. He wasn't the nerdy baseball guy. He just loved sports. He loved grinders. He loved guys that could get out there and out-athlete people, and he always put unbelievable lineups on the field with these unbelievable athletes. And, I mean, at the Marlins, when we won it all, Huizinga brought some studs in, but, I mean, our outfield was Moisés Alou, Devon White, Gary Sheffield. I mean, you got guys that were all-stars just caked through our lineup, and I was just a rookie coming up. I didn't get any at-bats in the World Series, but the team that Leland put together in Isaiah in Florida was one of the best teams ever.
Yeah, I know it was. It was a fantastic team, and it's too bad that team had to be broken up so quickly down the road. But let's pick up with baseball right after the break. I know Gino's got some questions lined up that he has in mind. Let's take a quick timeout, and we'll come right back with the legend himself, Josh Booty. We'll be right back.
Your internet flagship station for sports, Voice America Sports.
Life is complicated, and sometimes we all need a little help, but don't have the time for a full hour-long session or don't know who to turn to. That's where BetterHelp comes into play. With BetterHelp, I can get matched with one of over 2,500 licensed and approved counselors and therapists and get help anytime, anywhere, totally private. For a flat weekly fee starting at $35, I can connect with my counselor via text, chat, video conference, or phone, which is great for me because I'm always on the go. And I can go back to previous sessions whenever I want through my secure account from anywhere in the world. It's a great feeling to know that help is there, affordable, private, and convenient to my schedule. We all can use a little help. Visit betterhelp.com/VA Health and register for free. You can try it for 7 days without being charged on your credit card and get matched with a licensed counselor usually within 24 hours. Get BetterHelp today at betterhelp.com/VA Health.
If you're looking for more information on firearms and the shooting sports, check out Taking Stock with Kelly McMillan. Kelly is the owner of McMillan Fiberglass Stocks with over 40 years of experience. Now he's ready to share some industry luminaries and their perspectives with you. If you're interested in firearms, whether it be for shooting, for fun, competition, hunting, or self-defense, Kelly is here to share his wisdom and experience. Listen live for Taking Stock with Kelly McMillan, Fridays at 11 a.m. Pacific Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time on the Voice America Sports Channel.
If you think you've seen online TV before, let us surprise you.
VoiceAmerica.tv is online now.
The leader in live internet talk radio has done it again. Multiple channels, a state-of-the-art viewing experience, live and on-demand programs streaming 24 hours a day. It's exactly what you want, when you want it.
VoiceAmerica.tv.
From health and wellness to business, sports, and everything in between. Discover our new world. Visit VoiceAmerica.tv now and experience the future of online television.
VoiceAmerica.tv.
This is the Mike Abadir Show. If you want to call in today, we can be reached at 1-888-346-9144. That's 1-888-346-9144. Or send an email to mike@themikeabadirshow.com. Now, back to this week's program.
Welcome back, everyone. We are proud to have with us Josh Booty here. You could also tweet us at Mike Abadir, ABADIR, at it's me, Gino B. I always mess that up. For Gino Bacola or Josh Booty at Josh Booty 10. So where we left off was regarding your relationship with the Florida Marlins and the belief that skipper Jim Leland had in you, and that was a fascinating time period in your life, winning World Series. Talk to us a little bit more about what it was like hitting big league pitching, and was it what you thought it was going to be?
Yeah, I think hitting a baseball at the big league level is one of the hardest things to do in sports for sure. I mean, I think being on the PGA Tour has got to be similar. It's such a tough thing to do when you face guys throwing, and nowadays, man, you got so many guys throwing so hard with, their training regiments and, strength and size and how that's come into play into sports. I mean, these pitchers seem to be all, 6'4", 6'5", 6'6", throwing 95, 96, and it's every day. And, these kids are playing 80 games when they're 12 years old now, and so these guys are super prepared, super early to do it. But, I came from, I was playing baseball half time. I was playing football in Louisiana. We'd play 20 high school games in the spring and 20 in the summer, and then I was playing football, man. I didn't have the, like Alex Rodriguez, he was playing 100 games a year, 120 games a year down there in Miami, and that's what he did all year round. So it was very difficult for me, first of all, to pick up the wood, second of all, to be in the big leagues a year after I signed out of high school, and to be on the field with, those guys I mentioned, like Sheffield and Terry Pendleton and Darren Dalton and Conine and Bonilla. And, we just were stacked. And so, it was very eye-opening for me, not only to hang around with those guys, but, Andre Dawson was on our team, Kevin Brown, Al Leiter, just naming some names. But we had a roster full of guys that were a lot older than I was and a lot wiser than I was at 19. And yet I found myself in the locker room with those guys. So it was quite an experience. But, no one hits Kevin Brown when you guys throwing 97 with a sinker and slider. He was winning 18, 20 games every year, and those are the kind of guys you go up against. Man, I did face Dwight Gooden. I faced Roger Clemens and John Smoltz, and those guys at 19, when you're just kind of getting into the big leagues or trying to break in, even if it's in spring training games, those guys, they know what they're doing, man. So it was a rude awakening for me. It was a little tougher than I expected.
Well, Josh, your former teammate A-Rod, I got to say, he's been an incredible analyst in his transition post game. He breaks the games down. He's one of the absolute best, I think, in any sports. He reminds me now of how Romo's been in football the last couple of weeks, really calling things before they happen and giving like a great insight. We're going to put the pressure on you now with just a few weeks left in the baseball season. I'm a huge Dodger fan. I'm 30 years old. The last time the Dodgers were in the World Series, I couldn't speak yet, so this was a year when it looked like the Dodgers all throughout the season, they're still the favorite to win. They've been excellent until the last month or so. Still have a big lead. I think they just need one or two more wins to clinch. But they're a few games ahead of Washington for the National League overall. I think they're only a game ahead of Cleveland after the 22-game win streak for Cleveland. What is your overall thoughts on the baseball layout right now, and who do you like kind of heading into the playoffs?
Well, those are the two teams that I like. I also like the Red Sox just because I've followed them. I follow them. They're one of my favorite teams to watch. I kind of like these guys that are kind of falling off the Red Sox tree. Terry Francona in Cleveland, Dave Roberts now at the Dodgers. They're proven winners. They know how to win ball games. They got over the hump and won the World Series. Dave Roberts played a huge role in that, in the reversing the curse with, Millar and Baratek and all those guys that were in Boston with Big Papi. And so, Roberts knows how to win games and win championships. He does the little things right. He's been in the clubhouse. It comes down to being, in the clubhouse when it's getting when the grind gets really grindy, at the end of the year, and the Dodgers had that big losing streak last week and the week before. Sometimes it's tough to kind of turn the tide and get the ship back directed right. And I think that manager coming in like a Jim Leland and saying that right something, like you don't want a manager coming in and talking every day and wearing you out in the locker room or where you got to come in early and listen to a speech. You don't want to hear a lot of rah-rah stuff. You want to hear the right stuff, and I think that's what Francona does. That's what Dave Roberts brings to the table. I think that's what big leaguers need, especially these teams that are veteran-laden teams, the guys that have been there before. Kershaw and company, they got it going on, man. They just got to figure out, who's going to be probably their second starter in the playoffs, and then the Indians. You got to talk. I've never seen a team so hot in my entire life. They had saw some stat where they hit home runs in their winning streak of then they allowed runs. That's ridiculous stuff. So both these teams are very, 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 very good ball clubs, and they got very, very, very good managers.
Yeah, and I would think that the Indians have maybe the edge, not just because they're peaking at the right time, Josh, but also, they've been there. They had that experience of being in the World Series and going through some difficult postseasons. I know the Dodgers have as well, but their postseason success or lack of success do you think that's going to be something that hangs over their head?
It could, and the Cubs are getting the Cubs are getting better here towards the end of the season, and of course they made an unbelievable run last year. But the Indians, they had that series last year, man. I mean, they had it in their grasp. So yeah, they're coming off of that. They're really, really hungry. It's kind of like the Falcons probably are in the NFL. I mean, they blew that Super Bowl last year. They can taste it, and they're coming out. They've come out hot. They're 2-0, and they look like they haven't missed a beat. They actually look better. I think that's maybe what Cleveland's got going on in that clubhouse is just that hunger, that desire to get to where they were last year and figure out a way to win.
I think as a Dodger fan, one thing that I feel like why I want to capitalize on this year is I feel like the last few years we've seen the Dodgers, the Cubs, and the Nationals be the strong teams, and with the Dodgers getting such an advantage early on, I think the way that the playoffs set up for them, if they don't have to play both of those teams and go through two series of Washington and then the Cubs, or the Cubs and then Washington, I think that could really be the key for them. I'm not trying to overlook Arizona or whoever else might be in the wild card, but just from a purely how you could get yourself set up best, I think for the Dodgers to not have to go through those two teams and play two difficult series, that's why as a fan I'm hoping and I'm thinking this is the year where they really set themselves up best.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, you really don't want to play teams that are really good, have really, really good defined pitching, or teams that are really, really, really hot at the very end of the year. I mean, baseball is such a crazy game. I mean, you can go 4 for 4 and hit lazy singles, or you can go 0 for 4 and hit 4 rockets. It just, the way that baseball works out is so crazy sometimes, and that's why, winning the World Series and going through that whole postseason and winning the games and having those big series and pitching well over time and all that, it's so important. So it's going to be fun to watch, see how the Dodgers kind of respond to, some of this bad week or two, and kind of getting back to where they need to be. I know Darvish is they need him to pitch well, even if he's the 3 starter or whatever in the rotation. I mean, they've got to have some really good pitching efforts to beat the Cubs, to beat the Nationals in these series, man, because you're talking about the best 3 teams in the National League, best 4 teams in the National League. Arizona is another, like you mentioned, another great team, great organization, and they've been hot too. So I think this National League race the National League pennant is going to be a really fun one to watch.
Yeah, I agree. I think both leagues, it's going to be a fantastic postseason, and hopefully we can bring you back and break down some of those matchups once they become set. I've actually got a couple of emailers asking me some questions. We've got a couple of minutes before we go to break, so they obviously want us to go back to your college football roots at LSU. Coach O today announced that their stud running back is going to be out with a minor injury, so I'm not sure what's going on with Darius, but overall, man, I know they're near and dear to your heart. What do you think of the job that Coach O is doing? What do you think about the prospects of this season? Because you're going to have a stretch coming up here in a couple of weeks. I mean, they've got Syracuse and Troy coming up, so that'll be, I don't want to say a cakewalk, but they should be able to advance. But then you have Florida followed by Auburn, at Mississippi, and then Alabama. Tough stretch.
Yeah, it is. I think Coach Orgeron is doing a good job, and this is the reason that I believe it. He's going to recruit well, and then he's got 2 solid coordinators. Aranda, the defensive coordinator, Matt Canada, the new guy from Pitt that he hired this offseason, that is his offensive coordinator. And they in recent years, and I cover LSU football. I do LSU radio and have my own radio show down there in Louisiana. So this is what I talk about all the time. Darius Geis, of course, they're sitting him out because they feel like these next 2 weeks they can win without him, and the SEC stretch is coming. But Orgeron and them need to be able to throw the football. If they ever get behind in recent years, they've never been able to catch up. They've always really floundered when they're down, 10, 14 points. They can't spread you out and score in bunches like in Oklahoma or Clemson or, TCU, Oklahoma State, or, USC. I mean, some of these teams that can beat you throwing the football. LSU hadn't recruited the types of quarterbacks because it's not been their identity in the last 5 years that can hurt you in the pass game. So they can't play pitch and catch out wide, and that really hurts them. They can, however, or they have, however, been able to line up and steamroll people unless they go up against teams that are similar in size and speed and strength, and that is Auburn, that is Florida, that is Alabama, and then those games get really testy. And then if they get behind, there's nothing they can do. So I think that's their biggest test is how can that passing game progress enough to where they can be balanced enough to win the big ball games.
That's great insight from an LSU insider. We're up against a break, but when we get back, we want to cover a little bit more on the college football side. We'll start with USC and then transition to the NFL. Do you have time for one more segment with us, Josh?
Yes, sir. Let's do it.
Outstanding. Then everybody hold tight. We'll be back with more football talk with Josh Booty right after these messages.
Your internet flagship station for sports. Voice America Sports.
I'm busy and so is my family. Leftover pizza and unhealthy takeout isn't really doing it for us anymore. Just ask my bathroom scale. That all changed when I found Freshly. For less than $10 a meal, Freshly delivers 6 meals a week, always fresh, never frozen, prepared by top chefs and nutritionists using the best, freshest, gluten-free ingredients. The best part is the menu is always new and fresh, just like the food, and it only takes 3 minutes for me to prepare breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and there's no messy cleanup and no dishes. My family loves the choices and the taste, and Freshly delivers to my home and my office, so I eat healthy all day, every day. If you're tired of the same old cardboard delivery and takeout, try out Freshly.com today and save $20 on your first order using coupon code VAH639 at Freshly.com. Your taste buds and your scale will thank you. So save $20 today with coupon code VAH639 at Freshly.com. Okay, sports fans, here's your opportunity to discuss football, America's favorite sport. On an annual basis, millions of people attend, watch, and listen to football, both pro and college. Ray Ellis Sports, an internet talk radio show, was developed with the fan in mind. Join host, former Philadelphia Eagles and Cleveland Browns strong safety Ray Ellis on Voice America Sports every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific for exciting, interactive football discussions from the fans' perspective. Tune in every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific to Ray Ellis Sports right here on the Voice America Network, and let's talk football.
Become our friend on Facebook. Post your thoughts about our shows and network on our timeline. Visit facebook.com/Voice America.
This is the Mike Abadir Show. If you want to call in today, we can be reached at 1-888-346-9144. That's 1-888-346-9144. Or send an email to mike@themikeabadirshow.com. Now, back to this week's program.
Welcome back. We are with college football and NFL insider Josh Booty. And we were just talking about LSU and what they can expect over the next and MLB. Well, I mean, if I could keep going, right? Radio guy, TV guy, reality show guy, MLB insider. He does it all, and he does it all really, really well. So let's continue with the college football conversation. I know Gino is a diehard USC fan. I wouldn't be surprised if he names furniture and pets after SC Trojan type stuff. So I know you wanted to spearhead this conversation, Gino. What are some of the things that are piquing your interest about SC?
First of all, hopefully John David's doing well. I was a huge fan of John David. He was awesome over here for us. But we survived the big scare this weekend, the Trojans did, with Texas. Texas played really, really well. Who do you see, where do you see things stacking up towards the top? You know, it's a lot of the usual suspects this year. You know, you have Bama, who looks good. Oklahoma looks good. Clemson. Who to you look like the teams that you think are going to be hanging around at the end of the year?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a handful. I mean, I think there's 6 or 7 teams. Penn State looks like they're playing great team football. Ohio State took it on the chin. Michigan's a little young, so out of the North, I like Penn State. I think off the East Coast with Florida State's quarterback going down, you got to think Clemson and what they've been able to do with Bryant, kind of picking up where Watson left off. They're scoring in bunches, and they play great defense. They shut Auburn down a couple of weeks ago. They shut Lamar Jackson down last week. I mean, Heisman Trophy winner from a year ago. I mean, they look solid as it gets. And Dabo Swinney now, been in the championship the last 2 years. They've got a great shot at going right back. I think they're closing the gap on Alabama a little bit this year. Of course, in the SEC and in the South, I do like Bama because of their just really the strength and size of their team. And Nick Saban is the X factor of all X factors. And he was my coach in college. And I know how prepared those guys are each and every week and how balanced and well that, they run the football. They play great defense. They're like the Ravens back when Ray Lewis was in Baltimore and Ed Reed. I mean, that's the kind of football Alabama plays, and it's so tough to play them, especially if you have to play them week in and week out, like the LSUs and the Auburns and the SEC West teams, Arkansas, A&M. I mean, it's just they're such a juggernaut, man. It's so Alabama, and then I like out west I like SC, but of course I love SC because my brother played there, and I going back to Pete Carroll and Carson Palmer and all those days, Reggie and all. I love SC, man. I mean, no one likes them more than I do, but there's just some inconsistent play there. And Texas, they stopped the run when I thought that Texas wouldn't be able to stop the run last week. I was at that ball game. It was one of the best games I've seen in quite some time. But it was some sloppy play, a lot of drop balls by USC receivers. Some great plays too in the ball game. Ronald Johnson and Stephen Carr are probably maybe the best backfield tandem in college football. So I like the guys at Georgia too. I don't want to fail to mention Sony Michel and the other kid there at Georgia. I forget right now, but I think those the backfield's awesome. Sam Darnold just can present everybody with just tons of problems. If they get hot and they play pitch and catch, I don't think anybody on the West Coast can beat SC. So those would be my 3 or 4 teams, along with Oklahoma or Oklahoma State. Hopefully that Bedlam game at the end of the year will mean a ton to the college football landscape.
Hey, and let me jump in here, by the way, guys. Let's not sleep on one team, and that's the Washington Huskies. What's really interesting about them is that they've got a really tough matchup this weekend against Colorado in Colorado. Both teams are 3-0. But I'll tell you what, when you look ahead at their schedule, guess what team they don't have on their regular season schedule this year? USC. So I don't see Washington getting beat. But then again, I've said that so many times with the crazy Pac-12, and then you have a 55-51 shootout, and you never know what happens, and a team gets knocked off. But don't sleep on Washington.
I agree. I think you look at the head coach there too, and in college the head coach makes such a big difference, and he's such a solid head guy there that I don't think there's going to be a lot of slip-ups there for Washington. I think they're going to play sound, solid football week in, week out. It's just, the Pac-12's got some good teams in there, so you got to play your schedule, man, and then you're going to probably get an SC at the end of the season. So for them, it's going to probably boil down to, that final game, and then where they're, how their wins looked and different things of that nature, and if there's who has no losses, who are the one-loss teams out there. Because I think out of the Big 12, Oklahoma State, TCU at Oklahoma State this week's a great matchup. Not a lot of people are talking about that in TCU, but TCU's got an experienced quarterback in Kenny Hill. They're scoring like 50 points a game. So is Oklahoma State. That thing's going to be a barn burner. But TCU is a team that I'd watch out for. They got great defensive linemen, great corners. That's going to be some good football this week.
Sure is. And you know what? I'm really excited about this weekend. It's just right around the corner here. And I know Gino and I were talking about some matchups. Gino, what college football games intrigue you from a point spread perspective? And maybe we can get Josh to chime in on what he thinks.
Actually, I'd rather talk a few NFL point spread games, if you don't mind, because this was a really, we keep forgetting, Mike, we feel like we have 5 hours sometimes, and the show goes by so quickly.
It goes by so fast.
But what I thought was interesting this week, Josh, there are 10 road favorites in the NFL.
Wow.
And it's so early in the season. This is when, Vegas is still having a tough time figuring out what the right betting lines are. We actually have the Browns favored on the road at Indy. That just gives you an idea of what Vegas thinks of Indy right now, playing with Tolzien and Brissett. Will probably be starting still with no luck. You mentioned a team that I want to talk a little bit about, the Falcons. Seems like the real only marquee, or one of the marquee matchups this weekend, is the Falcons at the Lions. 2-2-0 teams. We saw the Lions get a win on Monday Night Football. They're quietly 2-0. Falcons are a 3-point favorite at the Lions. Vic Beasley's out 6 to 8 weeks, but Atlanta jumped back with a really good game last out. They kind of dominated the Packers through. Green Bay's a little bit banged up. How do you see that game unfolding, and is Atlanta right at the top tier of the teams in the NFL?
I think so, man. I would have them number one on my rankings if you were to ask me. I think, the Vic Beasley injury is a big one. That's gonna hurt them for the next 4 to 6 weeks. But I think what they do on offense, if you watch what they do, and it's funny that Sarkisian, the old SC guys, calling plays and is with them now, so it's fun to watch them. But Matt Ryan, NFL MVP. Devontae Freeman, absolute stud, who is a 3-down back. Coleman, the backup, is an absolute animal. He had a long run last week. Julio Jones, one of the best receivers in all of football, probably the best receiver in all of football. And then Sanu, he's like 6'4", 230. I mean, they've got monsters on the field. Julio Jones and Sanu, maybe the biggest tandem of wideouts I've seen in the NFL ever. I mean, these guys are dynamite. And then Matt Ryan's back there picking them apart. These guys know how to win football games. I'm telling you, they were a couple of mistakes away from being Super Bowl champions last year, of course, and we all know that what happened. But they're the most solid team that I've seen in the NFL by far. I mean, by far. That Green Bay game, man, they made Green Bay look bad last week. And I'm telling you, I don't care. Detroit, they played a bad New York Giants team that can't move the football. They're like the Cincinnati Bengals right now. I love Atlanta, and I'm a Patriots fan. I'm a Sean Payton fan. I'm a Pete Carroll fan, but Atlanta's got the best offense in the league.
Let's go to the Thursday night game. Tonight, we have the Rams, who are opening the season for the third straight game. They're favored. They're actually favored on the road again tonight. It's up to 3. They're playing at the 49ers. 49ers hung in very well against Seattle, but Seattle's struggling. We've seen so much bad offensive line play early on in the season. A lot of teams that just can't move the ball, can't seem to score. We've seen a little bit of improvement from Goff. Gurley's bounced back a bit. What do you think about this game? The Rams 3-point favorites up at San Fran.
Oh, this game is not one that I'm watching real close, but I'm not a fan of either of these teams. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I do, both teams have good ground games, not particularly masterful through the air, and so I really think that it's going to be a low-scoring game. I do like the Rams in this ball game. It'd be a great win for them. Anytime you win a game in the National Football League, it's a good win. I think if the Rams can get another solid win here, this will help kind of boost Goff and what they're trying to do. McVay and the different things that they're trying to do. I'd like to see the Rams come out with a win. I just think the 49ers are they've got a tough road to hoe, man. I don't think they're a very good football team. I'm a big fan of the guy they drafted from Alabama. I know he's been injured. I don't think he's playing. You could probably tell me Reuben Foster, but I love the linebacker out of Alabama. I think he's going to be a great player. I think John Lynch is going to turn some things around, but I do like the Rams tonight.
Hey, a couple quick matchups because we only have about a minute and a half to go. I don't know what you were looking at, Gino, but the 2 quick ones I want to ask about. Will the Chargers go to 0-3? They're playing the Chiefs this weekend.
I like the Chiefs, brother. The Chiefs are a very, very good football team. Andy Reid, Alex Smith, they run the football. The emergence of the running back Hunt. He's been one of the best fantasy players the first 2 weeks of the season. Kansas City's got a great football team, and I know Phillip Rivers, and they got some offense, but you got to like KC in that matchup.
What do you got on tap, G?
Let's go Panthers-Saints. This is an interesting game because we have not seen the Saints really play with that standout offense. They've had 2 tough games to start the season. I don't really like what I've seen from the Panthers yet. Now we know Greg Olson's been placed on IR. They're a little bit banged up. Cam has missed some wide-open throws. We haven't seen a ton yet from McCaffrey. This game is, if the Saints go to 0-3, they're going to be in some trouble, and Carolina could be 3-0 and a lackluster 3-0. I think they're a 6-point favorite at home against the Saints, the Panthers are.
Yeah, the Panthers hadn't been able to do a lot on offense, and the Saints, of course, put up big numbers on offense but have no defense, and their secondary is really weak. So it is going to be the telltale. The telltale is going to be, can Cam Newton throw the ball downfield to really penetrate that secondary and hurt them with big plays? It's going to be a fun game to watch. Division game, it's always a good game. Anytime you got Drew Brees and Sean Payton, you can be in any game. But the Panthers are such a strong team. I think especially on defense compared to what the Saints bring to the table on defense, that I do like Carolina in that game. And we might be looking at the last season. If things really unfold in a bad way down in New Orleans, this could be Sean Payton's last year in New Orleans.
Hey, I've got an email from Mike in Gilroy, and he's asking, do you have any locks this week? And maybe we already kind of covered them, but anything jump out at you?
I'm going to let y'all go with that one. I don't really know. I'm not looking at the lines right now, but maybe Gino can answer that.
Yeah, we'll hit a few more when in the next segment after Josh gets off with us. But I think you have to survive the airport, is what I heard. That's right?
Yeah, I'm headed into LAX right now, so I'm all over the place this morning. But dude, I really enjoyed doing the show with you guys, man. You guys are awesome.
Man, this was fantastic. We got to have you back on where we maybe have a little bit more time to focus just on football talk. I know that's where your passion is, and then also talk about baseball playoffs and what the teams are dealing with within a small series. And do you throw Kershaw out there 10 times, or how do you go about surviving? So we'll talk about all that good stuff. Josh, obviously the listeners out there can follow you on your Twitter, Josh Booty 10. Is there a radio station in particular that you're going to be on in the next couple of days that they can kind of hear a little bit more about your analysis?
Man, I'm on SB Nation Radio, a national show called The Franchise, and then I also do a couple of Louisiana shows on ESPN Radio called The Ticket, and they can get that app, The Ticket Sports Radio, and I have my own show in Louisiana. I'm fixed to launch a fantasy football show as well, podcast, but I haven't done that, and so it's kind of hard to follow me, actually, but if you get on SB Nation Radio and look for The Franchise or look for The Ticket Sports Radio in Louisiana, you can hear me there.
There you have it, guys.
You also mentioned before you go a couple of relief, I guess, fundraising things you were involved in. Is there anything that you want to mention or plug?
Man, I'm not involved with one or over another. I'm just trying to help out. I'm trying to actually put some deals together to really bring some things down there to Houston area, and then into South Florida. There's a real need there, and then also had some friends in Puerto Rico that there was no power yesterday, and I don't know how long that's going to last. So just really praying more than anything for these people and trying to help them get some stuff down there to I guess kind of mitigate all the stuff that's been happening down there. And Texas, man, was just hit so hard. People don't really realize it, but hundreds of thousands of homes ruined where people have had to change up their life, and so it's a really tough time. I mean, these disasters have been horrible for the U.S.
Oh, amen to that. We'll definitely keep all of them in our prayers, and if there's any cause in particular or organization that does good work that you're involved with, please let us know, and we'll get that message out there. In the meantime, Josh, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun. We definitely appreciate it. Have a fantastic weekend. Go LSU, go SC, and we'll talk to you soon, Josh.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you guys having me. A lot of fun.
Absolutely. That's Josh Booty, everyone. Thank you very much for participating in that conversation, Josh, and we will talk to you soon. We will be right back after this short commercial break.
Your internet flagship station for sports, Voice America Sports.
Get ready for the Get Down with Hurley Brown. Want to get inside of the minds of the players and coaches? We'll talk everything sports, but with a focus on the NFL, NBA, and college football. We'll review and preview the week's big games. We'll talk about the draft choices and free agents and go inside the teams for news, recruiting, and what's next from the colleges to the pro teams. It's the Get Down with Hurley Brown. Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 12 noon Pacific on Voice America Sports.
We're talking Western Ambush this week on The Revolution with Jim and Trav, taking a closer look at all the amazing big game hunting opportunities found in the Western states. Joining us is Jason Matzinger, host of Into High Country, Jill Gechter from Cinch Jeans, Dean Capuano of Sawarski Optic Quest, and Freddie Hartice of Hollywood Hunter. It's presented by Outdoor Channel, Sportsman Channel, World Fishing Network, and My Outdoor TV. Friday afternoons at 1 Pacific Time on the Voice America Sports Channel.
Follow us on Twitter at VoiceAmericaTRN. Get the lowdown on guests, new shows, and your favorites. That's VoiceAmericaTRN.
This is the Mike Abadir Show. If you want to call in today, we can be reached at 1-888-346-9144. That's 1-888-346-9144. Or send an email to mike@themikeabadirshow.com. Now, back to this week's program.
Welcome back, everybody. That was a treat for us to be able to spend a few minutes with Josh Booty. I hope you guys all enjoyed it as much as we did. For the last few minutes of the show here, we want to talk about a few NFL games and also end with what we've customarily been doing, which is expecting a lock of the week racing-wise from Gino Bacola. So, Gino, I'm looking at this slate of games. They're complete dog-ish, if you know what I mean.
I didn't know what you were going to say there. I was like, what are you allowed to say? Yeah.
Before I get beeped out here, we have a lot of listeners that are looking at these games, whether it be from a fan's perspective or a point spread player's perspective or a fantasy football perspective. A couple of the matchups that I found to be interesting, let's just say from a point spread perspective, is the Bucs are going into Minnesota, but Bradford is out. Now, Minnesota looked pretty good in week 1 against the Saints. How good they are, we don't know, because we don't know how good the Saints are. The Bucs looked pretty good in their first game, which was last week, because their week before was postponed due to the hurricane. So the Bucs going into Minnesota, road game for the Bucs and the young team led by Jameis. What do you think about this matchup? I'm not finding a spread for it.
I think it's right now, the ones that I've seen that are up, it's even, but I think they're holding out on the line because they don't know about Bradford, because that's going to change the way that this line is. He was a limited participant at practice on Wednesday. I'm actually hearing that he's trying to play. He got involved a little bit. I just don't like anything I'm hearing on the Minnesota end, though. So I would definitely go to our man Adrian Ross's team in Tampa. Tampa, they just beat down the Bears in week 1, and they have weapons. Their defense forced 3 first-half turnovers. They forced another one with their special teams. Mike Evans, Deshaun Jackson. He's going to be... You could see that him and Jameis were just a bit off with Deshaun. They had 1 or 2 big passes that they just couldn't quite connect on, but I think this is a very, very good team. They're only going to get better in a couple weeks when Doug Martin comes back. So, yeah, for me, I would play Tampa in this game heavily. If it's anything close, I would play Tampa. I think they deserve to be favored with or without Bradford, because if he's banged up at all, Minnesota need Bradford to play as well as he did in week 1 for them to be a good team. And if they don't have that kind of an effort from him defensively, they're good, but I just don't know if they're going to be able to score enough points to compete. I could see this being like a low-scoring game, especially if Bradford's not playing, where they're both just kind of running the ball, and it's between the tackles kind of game. So I would go Tampa here.
This league is a league of matchups and quarterbacks, and 2 games that I found interesting before we get to your horse racing analysis are the Seahawks at the Titans. We got Russell Wilson and Mariota over there. That's in Tennessee. And then I think the best game of the weekend is going to be the last game of the weekend, which is the Sunday night game, Oakland Raiders at the Redskins. You got Carr and Cousins. So what do you think about those two matchups?
Tennessee versus Seattle. Tennessee right now is a couple-point favorite. They're at home. Jimmy Graham didn't practice Wednesday with an ankle sprain. The key for Seattle is they got to protect Russell Wilson. They gave up 10 quarterback hits. And from a running perspective, it was nice to see Chris Carson get some run. Rawls came back. Eddie Lacy was inactive. But Seattle's been allowing a lot of rushing yards, and we don't know if DeMarco Murray's going to play for Tennessee. He's trying. Derrick Henry looked like an absolute monster. If DeMarco Murray is not playing this week, he's going to be a big, big play at daily fantasy leagues. Your FanDuel, your DraftKings, your Draft, all those places. He's going to be a big play. I think this is a big, big game for Tennessee. Is that their schedule is not that strong. So if they can beat Seattle here, they can win, three of their next 4 games, and they can, be maybe 5-6-1 or so. This is a really, really big game. I would lean towards Tennessee. I don't like what I've seen from Seattle yet. Seattle is generally the type of team that starts to peak towards the end of the year, the middle of the year. They rally, and I think that's going to be the case. They'll still make the playoffs in a weak division, but we're going to go Tennessee here at home. And if DeMarco Murray is out, you're playing Derrick Henry.
Let me interrupt because we got 30 seconds. Give us the Raiders-Redskins winner, and then give us the Parks winner.
Raiders look like one of the best teams in the NFL. Keep an eye on some of the injuries. Rob Kelly, Jordan Reed, both questionable right now for the Redskins, and Marshawn Lynch is dancing. I think the Raiders are going to be good. Play of the weekend for you, Mikey, at Parks. It's on Saturday. We're going to go to race number 9. It's the 5 American Pastime. This horse comes in from SoCal. I know him well for Bob Hess and Kent DeSormo. There's not a ton of sprint speed in this race. I think the versatility for him will be key. Should be sitting just off the pace, maybe 3rd or 4th early on. American Pastime. That's the number 5 in race 9 this weekend at Parks. It's a big weekend with the Cotillion and the Pennsylvania Derby.
Love it. Hopefully some of our listeners can bank all of those plays, whether it be football, fantasy, or that winner that you just gave out of Parks. Thank you, Gino, for that. We thank Josh Booty for bringing it for a terrific interview. And most of all, we thank you all, the listeners. We will see you at the same time, same place next Thursday when it's just Gino and I covering all of the relevant issues and hot topics and more point spread talk and horse racing winners on the Mike Abadir Show. Thank you. God bless. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us this week for the Mike Abadir Show. Please tune in again next Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time and 11 a.m. Pacific Time for another show with Mike and his co-host, Gino Bacola, on the Voice America Sports Channel. Have a great week.